Hello, I'm Julie, a graphic designer and single mother. Please remember to like and subscribe for more before I begin my narrative. Let's get going now. The kitchen was bathed in warm golden light on this lovely and bright morning. The eighth birthday of my daughter Joyce seemed like the ideal occasion for a celebration. I was in a hurry to get everything ready for the celebration. Colorful balloons and streamers were everywhere in the kitchen, and I wanted everything to be perfect for her special day. My little happiness, Joyce, was giddy with anticipation. She watched me, her face beaming with joy. Her voice was excited as she said, "Mommy, is the cake going to be here soon?" I said, "Any minute now, sweetie," while attempting to sound composed. "Grandma Emma is bringing your special unicorn cake." On the inside, though, I was a little anxious. I had a ton of work to do, including arranging the table, decorating, and making sure everything was flawless. To make things easier for me, I had asked Joyce's grandma, Emma, to come get the cake. Even though I trusted her, something didn't feel quite right. My phone buzzed while I was hanging up another string of balloons. Emma called. "Hey Emma, is everything okay with the cake?" I hoped for positive news when I asked. Emma remarked, "Julie, I'm so sorry," with a contrite tone. There was an error. By mistake, I delivered the cake to the incorrect residence. I mistook tomorrow for the celebration. My heart fell. Joyce's party is in an hour, Emma. How could this have occurred? I was trying to remain composed, but panic was starting to set in. "Yes, I am aware. I'm so sorry." Her voice was agitated as she answered, "I'll figure something out." However, I doubted that she truly realized the gravity of the situation. Feeling overwhelmed and irritated, I hung up the phone. Joyce's large, inquisitive eyes were observing me intently as they filled with worry. She whispered, "Mommy, what about my cake?" I forced a grin as I crouched down in front of her. "A small issue has arisen, honey. But what do you know? We're going to create a homemade unicorn cake, which will be much better. What are your thoughts?" Her face lit up instantly. "Really? We can make a unicorn cake, Mommy?" "Yes, we can," I said, my heart swelling with determination. "And it's going to be the most magical unicorn cake ever." Joyce's excitement gave me a boost of energy. Together, we pulled out the ingredients and got to work. It wasn't the plan, but I realized that sometimes the best memories come from unexpected moments. This was going to be a birthday Joyce would never forget. I smiled at Joyce's excitement, my heart warming. The kitchen quickly turned into our little bakery. Flour flew everywhere, eggs cracked with messy precision, and laughter bounced off the walls. We worked side by side, mixing, pouring, and baking. Soon, both our hands and faces were covered in sticky batter. Together, we shaped what could only be described as a lopsided yet charming unicorn cake. We decorated it with a random assortment of sprinkles and homemade frosting, making it uniquely ours. As the guests began to arrive, my earlier worries started to creep back in. Would everything be okay without the original cake? But Joyce's excitement snapped me out of my thoughts. "Mom, look at our cake," Joyce announced proudly, showing off our creation. "Julie, this is amazing. How did you manage this?" Nicole, one of the moms, asked, clearly impressed. "It took a little creativity and a lot of love," I replied with a smile, feeling a wave of pride wash over me. The compliments kept coming. "This cake is so cute. You should think about starting a baking business," another guest chimed in. Watching Joyce light up with pride as her friends admired the cake made my heart swell. Any trace of her earlier disappointment was gone. She laughed, played, and soaked in every moment as the center of attention. It was in that moment that I realized something important. No matter what Emma had intended, She couldn't take away the happiness of this day. The party turned out to be a hit. Joyce's smile stretched from ear to ear as she blew out her candles, making her birthday wish. Her friends cheered and clapped, their faces glowing with joy. The house was filled with the sound of laughter, singing, and happy chatter. It was beautiful chaos, and I wouldn't have changed a thing. As the party wound down and the last of the guests left, Joyce wrapped her arms around me tightly. "This was the best birthday ever, Mommy. I love you so much," she said, her voice filled with pure joy. "I love you too, sweetheart, more than anything in the world," I whispered, hugging her close. Later that evening, once the house was quiet and Joyce was asleep, I sat in the living room with a cup of tea. I reflected on the day, feeling both triumph and unease. The party had been a success, but Emma's actions nagged at me. Her apology had felt insincere, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her mix-up than she was letting on. This wasn't over. I needed to get to the bottom of what had really happened and protect Joyce from any harm Emma might cause in the future. This was just the beginning of my journey. Stay tuned for Chapter 2, where I begin to uncover the truth behind Emma's actions. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow along as the story unfolds. I started by casually bringing up the cake incident with Joyce and Shirley during one of our chats. I mentioned it in passing, hoping to learn more. "Oh, Emma was so proud of getting that cake for Janet," Shirley said with a cheerful tone. "She's been planning it for weeks." Weeks, my heart sank. Her words hit me like a brick. This wasn't a simple mistake. It was deliberate. Emma hadn't mixed up the dates. She had intentionally chosen to prioritize Janet over Joyce. I felt a wave of anger and sadness, but I knew I couldn't let my emotions take over. I needed to approach this carefully. Over the next few days, I started paying close attention to Emma's behavior around Joyce and Janet. The difference was clear and undeniable. Emma doted on Janet, showering her with affection and attention. Meanwhile, Joyce received far less, almost like she was an afterthought. It hurt to watch. One evening, as I was tucking Joyce into bed, she asked me a question that broke my heart. "Mommy, why doesn't Grandma like playing with me as much?" I hugged her tightly, trying to hide my own pain. "She loves you, sweetie," I said softly. "She just shows it in a different way." But deep down, I felt anger and sadness boiling inside me. It wasn't just favoritism, it was emotional harm, and I couldn't let it continue. Joyce deserved to feel loved and valued, not overlooked. I decided I needed to confront Emma, but I wanted to be prepared. Over the following weeks, I started documenting everything I noticed. I wrote down dates, times, specific examples of favoritism, and even snippets of conversations that revealed her bias. My goal wasn't just to call Emma out, but to make her see the impact of her actions. One day, I ran into Emma at the grocery store. She greeted me warmly, but I could feel a tinge of awkwardness in her tone. "Hi, Emma," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We need to talk about something important. It's about the kids." She looked surprised. "Oh, what about them?" she asked, feigning innocence. "Not here," I replied. I said firmly, "Let's meet for coffee next week." Emma hesitated, then nodded. "All right, Julie, if you insist," she replied, her expression unreadable. As the day of our meeting approached, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. I knew the confrontation wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. Joyce's happiness and emotional well-being were my top priorities, and I couldn't ignore Emma's behavior any longer. Finally, the day arrived. We met at a small cafe, the air between us heavy with tension. "So what's this about, Julie?" Emma asked casually, though her eyes seemed wary. "It's about Joyce and Janet," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I've noticed how differently you treat them, and it's not fair to Joyce." "What are you implying?" Emma's voice sharpened, defensive and guarded. The conversation was just beginning, but I was ready to stand my ground. "I'm not implying anything, Emma," I said firmly. "I seen it. The cake incident is just one example. Why, Emma, why do you favor Janet over Joyce?" Emma hesitated, her confident demeanor faltering. "It's complicated, Julie. You wouldn't understand." I leaned forward, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "I need to understand, Emma. Joyce is your granddaughter, too. She deserves the same love and care that Janet gets." The air between us grew heavy with tension. Emma shifted uncomfortably in her seat, alternating between vague excuses and outright denial. She tried to dismiss my concerns, but I stood my ground. I made it clear that her behavior wasn't just unfair. It was hurtful, and it needed to change. After what felt like an eternity of back and forth, I finally left the cafe, a swirl of emotions following me home. The confrontation had been exhausting, but I knew it was necessary. I had stood up for my daughter, and that's what mattered most. Now it was up to Emma to reflect on her actions and decide what kind of relationship she wanted to have with Joyce. Deep down, though, I knew this was only the beginning of a long and difficult journey. The following weekend, our family gathered for the annual reunion. The house was filled with laughter, the smell of delicious food, and the sound of cousins playing. On the surface, it was a happy, festive occasion, but inside, I was a bundle of nerves. I knew this was another chance to address the situation, but I wasn't sure how it would go. As I moved through the crowd, making small talk with relatives, my eyes kept drifting toward Emma. She was chatting and laughing, her carefree demeanor almost infuriating. It strengthened my resolve. I couldn't let this continue. Finally, I saw my chance. Emma was alone, refilling her drink in the kitchen. I took a deep breath and approached her. "Emma, can we talk in private?" I asked. She looked surprised but nodded, following me to a quieter corner of the room. "I need to talk to you about Joyce and Janet," I began. "I've noticed, and not just noticed, I've seen how differently you treat them. It's not fair." Emma's face hardened. "You're imagining things, Julie. This is ridiculous." "I'm not imagining anything," I replied, my voice steady. "And it's not just me who's noticed. Other people have too. Your favoritism is hurting Joyce, and I won't allow it to continue." Emma crossed her arms defensively. "You're overreacting." "No, I'm not," I said, my frustration rising. "I've watched how you dote on Janet and barely acknowledge Joyce. It's clear as day, and it's not okay." The conversation grew heated. Emma swung between denial and weak justifications, but I didn't back down. I calmly presented the evidence I had gathered, specific moments and instances that couldn't be dismissed. As our voices rose, a few family members began to notice, quietly drifting closer to listen. I turned to Emma one last time. "This has to stop, Emma. You're playing favorites, and it's damaging. Joyce deserves better." Finally, Emma's confident facade cracked. She sighed heavily, her shoulders slumping. "All right, maybe," she began, her voice trailing off. For the first time, I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. "I've been more attentive to Janet because she needs extra support," Emma finally admitted, her voice faltering. "That's no excuse to neglect Joyce," I replied firmly. "She's your granddaughter, too. She deserves just as much love and attention as Janet does." The room had fallen silent. Family members who had initially been oblivious to the conversation were now intently listening. Emma glanced around, realizing the weight of the moment and how exposed she had become. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, she stammered, her voice shaky. It's not just about what you meant, Emma, I said calmly but firmly. It's about what your actions have done. Intentions don't erase the impact, and Joyce has been affected by this. Emma tried to apologize, offering weak excuses and vague justifications, but the damage was already done. The truth was out, and there was no going back. As the conversation ended, the room buzzed with whispers and surprised expressions. It was clear that the family saw Emma differently now. In the days that followed, the family dynamic shifted. Emma, once seen as a charming and influential matriarch, found herself more isolated. Her usual charisma couldn't cover up what had been revealed. Family members were polite but distant, treating her with a new weariness. On the other hand, I noticed a change in how they treated me. There was a newfound respect and acknowledgement of the courage it took to stand up for Joyce. Joyce, blissfully unaware of the deeper details, seemed happier and more at ease. She laughed more freely, played more confidently, and radiated joy in ways I hadn't seen in a long time. That was all that truly mattered to me. The confrontation had been hard, but it opened the family's eyes to Emma's behavior and its consequences. It was a turning point, a moment that I hoped would lead to a healthier and more honest family dynamic in the future. As life moved forward, significant changes came into my own life. My career as a graphic designer flourished with newfound creativity and confidence. My work began to attract more attention. Clients were thrilled with my designs, leading to referrals and exciting new opportunities. The recognition was rewarding, but the most important change was the happiness Joyce and I found in our daily lives. Our bond grew even stronger, and our home was filled with laughter and love. One evening, Joyce sat scrolling through my social media feed, her eyes wide with excitement. "Mom, you're the coolest. Look at all these people loving your designs," she exclaimed. I smiled, my heart swelling with pride. We make a great team, don't we, sweetie? Together, we can do anything. Meanwhile, Emma's situation continued to evolve in a starkly different direction. The family had grown cold toward her. Invitations to events were politely declined, and her attempts to organize gatherings went largely ignored. Her calls and messages often went unanswered, and her influence within the family had all but vanished. At a family barbecue, Emma stood off to the side, her usual confident presence replaced by quiet isolation. It was clear that the family had changed, and so had I, Joyce, and I were building a life filled with love, positivity, and hope, leaving behind the shadows of favoritism and pain. I saw firsthand how Emma's position in the family had changed. She tried to join conversations and activities at gatherings, but her efforts were met with polite nods and quick excuses to leave. The days when people laughed at her jokes or sought her advice were gone. Now family members exchanged uneasy glances when she was around and found reasons to drift away. Did you see how Aunt Emma was practically ignored when she tried to join the card game? One of my cousins whispered to me during a family event. "Yeah, it's sad," I replied, feeling a mix of vindication and sadness. But after what happened with Joyce and everything else, people are finally seeing her true colors. The shift in how the family treated me was just as noticeable. I was no longer just Emma's daughter-in-law. I was now seen as a strong, independent woman who stood up for her child. People began to value my opinions and seek my company, a stark contrast to Emma's growing isolation. As the family dynamics continued to evolve, Joyce's next birthday approached. I was determined to make it a joyful, drama-free celebration. I planned a small, cozy party at home with just her closest friends. The house was filled with laughter, smiles, and the kind of happiness that had been missing in the chaos of the previous year. "This is the best birthday ever, Mom. You're the best," Joyce exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with pure joy as she watched her surrounded by her friends. I felt an overwhelming sense of pride and relief. We have faced difficult times and come out stronger. That night, after the guests had left and Joyce was peacefully asleep, I sat alone in the quiet of the living room. I reflected on the past year and everything we had been through. Standing up to Emma had been one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but it had opened the door to a better life for Joyce and me. Without the weight of favoritism and manipulation hanging over us, we could finally breathe freely and truly thrive. It had been a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and growth. I was sitting thinking when my phone buzzed. Emma sent the message, saying, "I've lost so much. I apologize for all of this. Perhaps we can speak one day." I experienced a range of feelings as I read her remarks, including sadness, justice, and even a glimmer of hope. There was a sense of loss for the tense relationship, even though it was satisfying to watch her deal with the fallout from her actions. Unquestionably, I felt at peace as I crawled into bed and turned out the lights. Together, Joyce and I had surmounted a great deal, and our relationship had only gotten closer. Our experience served as a tribute to tenacity, the strength of moral conviction, and the unwavering bond between a mother and her daughter. I had a lot of hope for the future, even if this chapter of our narrative was coming to an end. How do you feel about Julie's handling of Emma's situation? Do you think she was correct to confront the partiality and defend Joyce? Do you believe her actions were appropriate given the situation? Or was there another way she might have handled it? This narrative delves deeply into family dynamics and the difficult decisions we occasionally must make for the people we care about. Confronting these problems isn't always simple, but standing up for what's right can result in significant change. Please share your ideas in the comments section below. How would you have responded in a comparable circumstance? Let's have a discussion. Please take a time to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you liked the narrative and the adventure we shared. Your assistance is greatly appreciated and enables us to share more tales like this one. We appreciate your presence and participation in our trip today. Keep checking back for more touching tales, and never forget that you are never alone in overcoming obstacles in life.